is one of the most important security measures that you must be aware of. And like you see, this particular user, as of before I mapped this user to this database, the user have a public role permission, which they will see the databases but won't be able to access or do anything on it. You see, like if I click on any other databases on this instance, they can see it over here, but they can't access it except for the one that I gave them permission to access. And that permission can be granular depending on what your intention is. So, and we simply go back. This is the user right here, mind you, and this is the administrator. This is me managing this user. If I go back to that user under security, and all I have to do is, and everything that I do to this user is applicable to a group, is applicable to a login. So I'll do this right now. Go to properties, and this time I'm still going to leave it at public, and I want to map this database to this user to AdventureWorks. And under that, I want to give this user, if I give you need to read about all of this: permission, access, admin, backup, operator, database reader, data writer, and all of the rest. So if I decide to give this user on this database right now, if I give this user the data reader, all they can do is to read, they can write on the instance. So if I give them read and write, they can read and they can write. So I'm just going to give this read and write right now and say okay. So if we go back to that user, now they should be able to view the content on this database AdventureWorks. You can see they now have access to AdventureWorks. So if I, for instance, may come here and paste this here and say, okay, I will be reducing the size of this back to 100. Okay, so for this particular table on this instance, which is the AdventureWorks, we are dealing with the sales credit card. Sales credit card is right here. This is it. And this is the information. We have the credit card ID, credit type, and all of that. Now this is all of this right here. So if I, for the user in question, let me do this. Opening a new query. Oh, I was trying to. So that will be this user. I need this information for this user as well. Okay, so if I can decide on what they can see on this database, database by simply going back to the user, or rather, all I have to do is go to the database as an administrator and go to credit card. This is it. Right click on it, go to properties, go to permissions, and I have to find that user. I have to find that user. Okay, check, and that's it. So the user is now here. If I click on this user and I hit the select button, it will give me this column option, permission, and I can go in there and be like, okay, so I want this user no, I don't want this user to have access to the card number, and I don't want them to have access to, let's say I just don't want them to have access to card number, and I don't want them to have access to the expiry date of that card, and say, okay, if this user goes, right now they can see the credit card number and they can see the expiry date. But after that is done, I believe if this user try to, so they can no longer see that because, and the reason is that the credit card number and uh, and the expiry dates have been, they've not been granted permission to see it. So all I have to do again, once again, is run this statement from there. 1 minute, please. I go back and say credit card year 1000 row. You see, so they have been blocked from seeing card number, and they have been blocked from seeing the expiry dates. Now, if I run this command, they can now read, but what they cannot see anymore is the card number and the expiry dates. And that's how you can limit their access to, even on this object level, as to what they can see and what they cannot see. So, and it goes on and on and on. There's so much that can be done, but yeah, you should be able to manage users in a different ways, in different ways, and you can as well. And one of the permission you do want to be careful about is giving the the sysadmin role. The sysadmin role automatically gives them permission to do and undo anything on this database. Okay, it gives them a permission to do and undo anything on this database. So that's one permission you want to be very careful about. And if you want to undo what you did here, all you have to do is right click, go to, no, we are doing it at the object level, remember. So we go to the database in question, we go to that credit card, this is it over here, and then go to properties, go to permission, and I can now choose this user again, select option, go to permission and say is that what it is? Okay, and I just want to grant them all access again. Okay, where, oh, this is right here. Sorry. So uncheck this and say, okay, I'll undo what I just did here. So that was the right, this is the right one. And say, okay. And if you go back here, if I actually can replace what I and replace the card number and this, they will be able to see the entire table once again. That's how that works. So right now they can, like you see, another thing is you can actually deny them access to an entire table. Like say the human resources employee table, for instance. Right now, this user can view this human resources employee table. They have access to it. But if I go on as an administrator and decide to deny them access to that employee table, all I have to do is right click, go to the property of the object, go to permission, Now you see I have to, for every of them, you have to more or less do the same and say, okay. So if I take the select option, go to column permission and deny access to everything on that particular object, or deny everything, and say okay, and say okay. This user, let me make sure to simply just let me refresh. If this user try to view this same table, human resources employee, am I right? Once again, they won't be able to view it because they have been denied access to that table. The matter of fact, this is it over here. Where I click and say top 1000 row, and you see they have been denied full access to that table, even though they can see it. So you can as well go back there and undo what I just did. I click, go to properties, go to permissions, and then select the user, select this, and undo all of that. So that means I can access them. Of course, we already experiment that. So you can decide, okay, I just want you to see these three tables on this particular object. So, and say, okay, and say, okay, and that's how that works. And if you go back here and run this by the user, they can see it once again. So security we've discussed security at SQL Server level, security as database level, and security as object level, and how to manage user. We discussed database, transparent data encryption. We discussed dynamic data masking. And we also discussed patching, and I showed you how patching is done. So that would be and well, before I leave, I would like to talk about one more thing just for you to see the difference between patching a database, patching a server, and upgrading a server. So there are two types of